Okay, good morning everyone, or good afternoon if you're not on the West Coast here. Welcome to this month's collaborative webinar. This month in March, we are talking about innovative matching strategies. This is a collaboration of a couple groups, Education Northwest, the National Mentoring Center, Friends for Youth, the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota, and Oregon Mentors. So we have just a couple slides to some introductory slides. Most of you have been on webinars, so you know what's going to happen here, and we don't want to spend too much time doing this. But just to know, you'll be getting some follow-up emails with information about the materials from this webinar, as well as contact information. And I'll remind you again that at the end we have a very short 5-question survey as you exit the webinar. So if you have any questions about any of that, please let us know. Otherwise, we're just going to move right into starting today. Again, this is the 2012 Collaborative Mentoring Webinar Series. My name is Sarah Kremer. I am Program Director here at Friends for Youth Mentoring Institute in Northern California. And today, I'm the host today. We have Celeste Jansen and Meg Ferns from Oregon Mentors who are supporting us today by handling the questions that you'll type in, and that you'll see that in your control panel that should show up on the right side of your screen, and also through the chat panel. So welcome, Celeste and Meg.
Thank you.
Okay, and we also are joined today with by April Reardon, who's Director of Training and Partnerships at the Mentoring Partnership of Minnesota. April will be running the slides and the visuals, and she's also going to jump in as needed. So hello, April.
Hello.
And also some behind-the-scenes work has been done, as always, by our other collaborators, Mike Geringer from Education Northwest, National Mentoring Center, and we're also expanding our partnership a bit with some other people, Amber Troop, December Warren, and Candace, I forgot Candace's last name on here, from Indiana Mentoring Partnership. Amber is from the Mentor Michigan. So we welcome all of our collaborators here, and so let's keep moving on. As most of you all know, when you're participating on a webinar, everyone is muted. Type in questions, as I said before, in the question box in your control panel. And if you are connected by a telephone or have a good connection to your audio through your computer, if we may ask at some point for people to raise their hands to talk aloud in today's webinar. If you'd like to ask questions or pose something to everybody, then you may choose to use the chat panel and send it to everybody. So before we get started with our topic, we're going to run just a couple polls. This helps us know who's on the webinar. So if you could help us out by letting us know how you would describe your experience level in the youth mentoring field. So if you can choose new or beginner, experienced, or an expert in the field. We'll see who's here. We have getting almost everyone voting. And we'll close it in just a moment. Thank you all for helping us out with this. This gives us a good sense of what we want to cover today. Okay, and here are our results. Okay, we have 69% of you are experienced in the field. That's the largest group. 23% consider yourselves new or beginning in the field, and 8% of you are expert in the field. So thank you very much for that. That's kind of in line with what we've been experiencing with our other webinars. And we also wanted to ask you, what is your role? So who are you? Where do you come from? What kind of role are you serving in youth mentoring, or perhaps just another kind of youth service program? So please choose if you work in a mentoring program, if you're a researcher, if you are a funder or work for a funding source, or if you provide training or technical assistance, or if there's something else. That if your role is not included on this list, go ahead and let us know. And you can, if you chose other, let us maybe type it into the chat panel, let us know what this other is. And I see here that we have the majority of our participants work in a mentoring program. Excellent. A tiny percentage are, we have researchers and funders, and 12% of you provide training and technical assistance, and 5% others. So let's see if you did choose other, let us know what that is. And our last beginning poll question, we're going to in the future add this to our registration, so we don't have to take time with this. But just we wanted to get a sense of how many young people your program serves annually. So just an estimate would be great, just to let us know what size programs we're looking at. And obviously, if you do not work with a mentoring program, you do not have to choose one of these answers. So we're getting almost everyone there. Take your best guess what we have. This also gives us a sense of who's on the call, and especially in terms of what programs are going to be sharing. So I think we're close enough in terms of everyone voting, and here are the results. Looks like the majority, almost evenly split now between a small number, kind of a smallish, medium-sized number. Then also we have medium-sized, about 126 to 500 youth, and also more than 1,000. So great, thank you very much for that. That gives us a good sense of what we're doing. And now
if we have any mathematicians, just know that this is based on about 200 attendees right now. So this might be a good context to have.
Great. Okay, someone get working on that. We'll come up with a number by the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's just jump right into what we're talking about. I know all of us have gotten a lot of emails of interest to talk about this topic of looking at what's the role of the relationship in youth mentoring, especially in terms of matches. And so we started our conversation with Dr. Tim Cavell, who is a youth mentoring researcher, and he was unable to join us today. So we did an interview with him last week, and we did, actually I don't think we sent it out earlier, but we will be sending out a link to YouTube to take a look at the interview that we had, that we did with him. It's a 13-minute interview, and he really talks about his somewhat provocative questions. Do all mentoring matches equal mentoring relationships? This was an interesting question he posed at the Summer Institute on Youth Mentoring. That's what the interview looked like as we were in process. So interesting question to put up, as really thinking about what's the difference between a match and a relationship. So we actually have well, let me read through some of these things. If the relationship is the heart of mentoring, what does that mean for matches that aren't very strong? And is the only prize a long, strong match? And Tim had some really interesting kinds of things to say about that, especially in terms of his research with his program. But let's go ahead and run that other poll that we have. We wanted to know from you, what percentage of your program's matches do you feel are close, enduring relationships? And again, take your best guess. This question he posed at the Summer Institute on Youth Mentoring, and I think most people were, and Celeste, jump in here too, because I know you were there. Most people were, it took them a moment to really think about this question, but really came back to the idea of maybe not all of them are close relationships. Okay, so we've got almost everyone voting, and let's see what you all said. Oh, interesting. So we 36% of you, the largest percentage. I'd say between the two largest percentages, 40 to 60% of your matches you feel are close, enduring relationships. So that's an interesting response there. Anyone else want to jump in and talk about the results here? I think everyone is on mute except for me, so I'll just keep moving on.
I think, you know, Tim would say, so then what about that other 40%? You know, what about those matches? And sort of as we move forward and look at some more of his ideas as we frame this, then to think about how, you know, so what's your intention in making those mentoring matches? Is it a mentoring relationship or more about providing a mentoring program?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you, April. Some of the things that Tim also talked about is how can you predict match success? How do you really know if it's going to be a close enduring relationship? And if you don't know, and many of us do not know right from the beginning, how then can we reframe thinking about the mentoring relationships as the context for providing these prevention-focused activities and experiences? So maybe the goal for a program is not necessarily about having maybe decades-long or lifelong friendship, but maybe it's about the mentoring components that are delivered through the mentoring relationship. Okay, so are we getting any questions or comments as we're talking about Dr. Tim Cavell? Oh, and we can go show the last slide that we have on him, where we have 2 more slides where we talk to him in the interview about his programs, the Lunch Buddy mentoring, where he was saying it may not necessarily be about a long-term close relationship that provides some really positive benefits. So any thoughts or any comments coming through?
A couple things have come through. We have had 2 folks right now say this idea of an enduring relationship is an interesting one. One person asked, what qualifies as an enduring relationship? And someone else said, I think that the term enduring is a confusing term. How long does enduring mean? We hope that our matches last for several years. So I think it might be helpful when we're talking about enduring to say we also mean not just the length, but really that strong emotional attachment or that really strong relationship. It's different. Not every match looks like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we talked with Tim about in the interview too is really deciding as a program, what's your goal? What do you hope to accomplish if you're intending to create long-term matches where you are looking at this sense of enduring? Then you want to make sure that you're structuring your program to create those kinds of matches. Whereas if you're really just looking at an idea of delivering some of these prevention-focused activities through mentoring, long-term really isn't what you're intending to accomplish through your relationship. Okay, great. Any other thoughts from our collaborators? April, Celeste, would anyone like to jump in?
Just because I'm showing these slides about the Lunch Buddy program, I just think it's interesting. When you listen to Tim talk about how the Lunch Buddy program was set up, it was designed to restrict the quality of the mentoring relationship, really testing, was that the most important part? And then in this example of bullying, and looking at if the kids who were going to be matched in this program were victims of bullying or had been identified that way, that he's just proposing that perhaps it isn't actually just the relationship itself, and that's often what we talk about is the relationship is that agent of change that helps these kids. It was more about having these cool college kids come and have lunch with them, and then it was more about providing that mentoring program helped to do all of these things that are listed about that, improve their reputation, make them cooler and more popular, or improving those interactions, all those different things that are listed there. So thinking about, is your program intending to provide a mentoring relationship, or are you providing a mentoring program in which all these other things can happen? I don't know if that added anything or not, but I felt like I should explain why I was showing those slides.
Yeah, and these are Tim Cavell's slides from some of his presentations that we're using.
And I just wanted to add that the clip from Tim Cavell is only about 13 minutes, and so I would just encourage everyone when we're done, just sign on and listen to it. It's really interesting and really provocative.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on. Some of the other, and I will say too that one of our goals throughout this collaborative webinar series is to give you kind of pull together a lot of different resources that we all collectively have come across. And so there may be a lot of information that you see and that you hear about on these webinars. And please know that you will get a link to get back to these slides. So if you don't quite write everything down as we're going through it, don't worry, you'll be able to come back to it. And so we're going to be covering a lot of different kinds of information on this webinar, but we wanted to also start with a little bit of more research specifically about matching and what people have found based on research to work. This is from the most recent meta-analysis. This is what we covered in our January collaborative webinar.
April, I'm including this one just to respond to that question that Celeste shared where somebody was asking about what is duration or enduring.
Great.
And defining that, and just thought I'd include that underlined part as we start to look at that research. And then I'll move forward to the matching specific.
Yeah, so as we can see, research isn't giving us very much information that's helpful in terms of setting up best practices and what we want to do. So it's interesting to look at the average duration of 6 exemplary programs was less than 9 months. So interesting to really think about how duration and the meeting duration and frequency is impacting this too. So this is also from the meta-analysis, and April, why don't you go ahead and say a little bit about what you're highlighting here. You might be telling us right now, April, but you're...
Oh, to highlight from the meta-analysis that
yes.
What it says, and so one of the big conclusions is just that there are stronger program effects associated with matching mentors based on similarity of interests, which really reinforces previous research as well, but that was definitely a moderator associated with a stronger effect.
And I think also really parallel to what practitioners know from experience is that factor of having something in common to start with does help to build the relationship and help continue to build it as the match continues. So thank you for that. Also looking at, we wanted just to reference the elements of effective practice. These are this is the standard on matching, and again, we also wanted to highlight the fact that with this new edition of the elements, they were really looking at of really including standards that are backed by research and backed by some kind of evidence. So it may not be as long of a list as previous versions, or maybe what you have decided for your program is important. But what they found is the standard to match mentors and mentees along dimensions likely to increase the odds that mentoring relationships will endure. Some of these dimensions include interest, proximity, availability, age, gender, race, ethnicity, personality, and expressed preferences of mentor and mentee. So lots of different ways to get to this information, but we kind of wanted to share what's out there as a standard. And perhaps we should I wonder if we should do that other, let's do that other poll now. We were curious to find out from all of you as our experts in the field, what are your top criteria in your program's matching strategy? Obviously, this could be a much longer list, but we only have room for 5 choices here. So these are the ones we chose. You may choose more than one. We just kind of wanted to get a sense of what else is important to you as you're thinking about making a match. So we have geographic location, gender, similar interests, race or ethnicity, and parent or caregiver preferences. So obviously if you're not working in a program, you don't need to answer, but if you are, let us know all of your choices of what you consider important while making that match. And let's see what we've got. Okay, so 88%, this is the highest percentage here, 88% of you say similar interests. Really reflective of the research and practitioner wisdom. Next we have gender at 66%, geographic location at 58%, parent-caregiver preferences 37%, and race or ethnicity at 19%. So that's kind of in line with what I was thinking. Anyone else have any thoughts on that or any comments coming from our audience? For my collaborators, remember if you are muted, you will need to unmute yourself here. Okay. So we'll just keep moving on then. So on our next slide, we kind of wanted to talk about some just, general ways that programs are, this is a great transition into talking, we'll be introducing two other panelists on this webinar today to talk about how their programs use their own programs matching strategies, I should say. So some general ways of thinking about how to get this information. Some programs use interest inventories. Sometimes these kinds of questions are embedded in the mentor application, in interviews, references, comes from observations of both the mentors and mentees, some of the motivations mentors may list for wanting to be involved in the mentoring program, input from all the other people around both the young person and perhaps the mentor as well, and really getting to know both parties on a personal relationship level. So those were some of the kinds of things that we were thinking of, but also it's important to remember comes up in when we talk about observations and establishing that personal relationship. Intuition is also a big factor in connecting, making a really good match, not only for if you're looking for that long-term enduring outcome, but also if you're thinking about using the match to deliver some specific skills and activities. I know within our program we have great stories from times when mentors and mentees find out things they have in common that we didn't even know about. And sometimes I think that's sort of like the X factor. We never quite know exactly everything about everyone, but hopefully they'll have some of those things to start the process of learning about each other from the beginning. Okay, so at this point, I think, do we have any questions or comments? I see some great...
Yeah, there's some great comments that were typed in. A couple people said they were just surprised by the poll. One individual said she would have put mentor preferences highest. Someone else said that they really think that gender is the most important, and they were surprised by the results. And then Kathy asked a great question, what about compatibility of personalities? And I think we might talk a little bit about that later on.
Great. Yes, I absolutely think compatibility is a big factor, and we will be discussing some of that as we go through. So at this point, we're going to jump into, we have two special panelists today from two different programs. First, we're going to, and I will also be talking a little bit about Friends for Youth matching strategy, but first we're going to start with Ellen Mahoney, who works with iMentor. Ellen has been working for 10 years in adolescent, well, she previously worked for 10 years in adolescent education, received her BA in English from the University of Oregon. She's also worked at the Arthur Ashe Educational Guidance Program in Queens, where she provided guidance, counseling, and educational assistance to teenagers and their families, and trained guidance counselors and coaches on adolescent development and high school and college admissions. She also worked in Washington, D.C.'s public and alternative schools, and got her master's in counseling at George Washington University. She's been working for iMentor for, I think, 8 years, right? And
5 years.
5 years, okay. Oh, 8 years as a mentor and tutor in a couple different programs and has been with iMentor for 5 years, and just wanted to hear a little bit about their innovative matching strategy. So welcome, Ellen.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be in this webinar. I think what the collaborative is doing is really fantastic, so I'm excited to be here. I'll go ahead and just dive right in. I'll give you a really quick background on iMentor so you understand the context of the matching. So at iMentor, about 5 years ago, we developed an online platform similar to a social networking site for mentors and mentees to interact online. And the platform allows iMentor to monitor and supervise performance and interaction. And it provides the mentor and the mentee a safe space to interact online, use our curriculum, sign up for in-person meetings, and a bunch of other stuff. So one of the things that the platform does is it captures the information from the mentor application and the mentee application. And then that information allows us to match pairs according to similarities. So at iMentor, the main, the most important thing for us in terms of matching is finding similarities between a mentor and a mentee. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. So the platform, we developed an algorithm that allows us to kind of use technology as best as we can to find a perfect match. And of course, there's no such thing as a perfect match, but as close as we can get. So basically what we do is, in those two applications, we ask questions around career, career, personal, and academic experiences. So we are looking for mentors and mentees that share interests and experiences in those three areas. So for the mentor side, those questions are really simple. Just, what careers have you worked in? What did you study in college? What were you like when you were a teenager? Would you describe yourself as outgoing? Would you describe yourself as shy? Would you say that you were an overachiever, an underachiever? Personal questions like, did you ever lose somebody close to you? Did you move around a lot when you were younger, etc. On the mentee side, we ask questions, similar questions, but we phrase it in a way that allows us to help the kid feel like they have a sense of ownership and choice in the matter. And so the questions are phrased like, what career areas would you like your mentor to be familiar with? Or what personal life experiences do you want your mentor to have experienced? And so when we phrase it that way, we're trying to help the mentee feel like they're really owning the process, and at the end of the day, they're choosing their mentor, even though technically they're not, but just, adolescent development 101, helping them feel like they own the process. And so those questions for each category, academic, career, and personal, according to, you can get 10 points in each category, and you earn points by finding similarities between mentees and mentors. When the mentee finishes their application, they also have an opportunity to kind of weigh their strength of match score. And they get that opportunity by answering, what's the most important area that you want to focus on with your mentor? Is it the personal stuff? Is it the academic stuff? Or is it the career-related stuff? Because, for example, you might have a mentee that loves math, is passionate about math, and we have a mentor that is an accountant and loves math just as much. But maybe the mentee wants to work on something personal, like fitting in better in school or getting along with his parents better. And so maybe we might find a better mentor suited for that particular goal. And so what happens is the platform takes all of this information and it generates a top 10 list. And the top 10 list is the top 10 mentors for this particular student. And it's based on what we call the strength of match score. That's a total of 30 points. And so the highest strength of matches obviously get into that top 10 list. And then finally, the last step in this system is for the human being to get involved and really, rely on what Sarah was talking about, rely on their intuition. So they'll say, all right, well, the computer says that, Joe Smith is the best mentor for this particular mentee. But, when I observed him in training or during the interview, I just feel like his sense of humor is going to turn this kid off. So let me look at the other mentors and see what my gut instinct is saying and see what I know about that person's personality and what the other qualitative information they've given us during the interview process or during the training. Let me make a better match. And that's really important. And I would say that's why it's really important to have staff that have strong interpersonal skills and have an understanding of human development and adolescent development. The last thing so that's basically the algorithm. The last thing I'll say is what's really interesting is I'm sure those of you that are practitioners, that sometimes you get to the bottom of the barrel as far as matching mentors and mentees, and you have less choices when you're at the end of the matching process. And that can be really hard, finding similarities. Well, one thing that we've found at iMentor is that we've, in some cases we've had no other choice, but we've had to match mentors and mentees with lower strength of match scores than we normally would have liked. What's interesting is those matches still tend to endure because the mentee feels like they still chose the mentor. So there's the illusion of having similarities, even though they might not have as many similarities as another pair, which I think is kind of an interesting observation. And that's basically it. I mean, I would say, the poll asked about, do you consider race and do you consider geographic location? The race or any other kind of identity piece besides gender is not part of the algorithm, but because we work with adolescents and identity, figuring out your identity is one of the most important social emotional tasks that an adolescent has to figure out. We do take into consideration race and other identity areas. So if a kid says, look, it's really important to me that, I'm matched with, an African American just like me because I have questions about that, then we're going to do everything we can to find a mentor that is African American and has similarities with the mentee. So that's just really important to kind of keep in mind. And that goes back to the kind of intuitive piece, the human element that we add to the technical side of matching. So that's
okay.
It.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ellen. I know I've seen a couple questions come through, and Celeste, maybe you can ask a few of them. But one of the things I was also thinking of as you were talking, Ellen, is this idea of, of if you're looking for the strongest match, I think coming back to some of what Tim was saying and maybe a little bit of what you were saying in terms of maybe not the highest quality or highest, how did you phrase that with your, not the highest strength match in terms of your algorithm,
yeah, right.
But shouldn't any mentor who goes through training and goes through the process be open to and have enough of the right skills to connect with any young person? Just a provocative
absolutely.
question I'm throwing out there. So
Absolutely, and I think that goes, that just plays into how important your screening and your training components of your program are. I mean, we at iMentor, some of the areas that we screen for is, openness to experiences in different cultures, flexibility, ability to resolve conflicts and work with other people, that kind of stuff. So ideally, they're coming in with a baseline of qualities that will make any match strong.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So Celeste, any good questions we're getting from our audience here?
Ellen, if you could briefly address what are the age of the mentees that you work with? A lot of folks are writing in questions and asking how successful is this with the younger kids?
Sure. So I mentor, we focus on adolescents, and we have two programs. One's based in New York City, and that's our kids are between 14 and 20 years old, because some of our kids are still, we're a school-based program, and some of our kids are organizations around the country providing technical and training support and this online platform. But all of those programs work with adolescents to college-age students. So we don't work with the younger kids, so I couldn't say how that might, how this program would be helpful or not with a younger child.
Great, and several folks are writing in and asking if iMentor is available for other programs to use. And so I think what we could go ahead and do is have them contact you directly. Would you be willing to share your email and just type it into the chat box?
Yes.
Great. Okay, and we have one last question that I think is pretty interesting. We had somebody write in and ask if you have a sense of how strong are the matches that you match, and with that earlier question, how would you say that your match quality strengths are for your program?
Celeste, can you ask that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, so this is the exact language. What percentage of matches with iMentor would you say are quality matches? What about strong relationships?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I would say at iMentor, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Really, our curriculum that we've developed is really the treatment, and the relationship is the vehicle. And so I would say that about, this is just my observation, I would say about 65% of our relationships are strong relationships that endure. We actually have a pretty good, our matches do last for a couple years, for the most part, the majority of them do. So that's positive. But, as you know, it's just so hard to get two humans together and to click and to follow through on goals and all of those sorts of things. So I would say that the matches that that are not in that 65%, I would say are okay. They're not extremely strong. They're not extremely close, but they're okay, and they do last, and they, for the most part, and they are able to kind of follow through on the curriculum. And then I would say about 10% of our matches do not endure, and depending on the year, it's usually between 7 and 10%, do not endure, where we have to ultimately unmatch the two.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, great. And I know we could spend, we could probably do webinars for 6 hours with all of the great questions that we're getting and all of the great information, but we're going to have to move on to get through what we had planned for today. And we also wanted to just throw in a little bit, in April, I think this is something you can speak to, something that Dr. Jean Rhodes has been talking about recently of improving some of our matching strategies.
Well, we had Dr. Rhodes here for the Minnesota Mentoring Conference in October, and she, in her address, had mentioned that she's working on developing an algorithm. So thought we should share that that's in the works in case somebody's sitting at their computer thinking, I wish I had an algorithm for my program. But Dr. Rhodes shared this slide and some of this information, letting us know that they're working on a more scientific approach to matching, which that in and of itself I think is an interesting, provocative conversation to think about. And again, looking at how this is why we wanted to frame it with those ideas from Tim Cavell of can you take the human out of it, which I don't think Jean would say that's the case, but more about how do you get closer and scientifically use the data to be able to make a better decision. So she didn't have I know she keeps saying it soon, but not sure exactly when that would be available, but she did say that she thought it would be something. The hope is that it would just be available to the mentoring field. So to keep your eye out for that, and maybe instead of going back and creating your own, you can hold tight and see what this turns out like or what it looks like. I did ask the question of, if eHarmony can't figure it out, why do we think we can? It's just an algorithm. She was entertained by the question, and I think, just acknowledge that mentoring relationships are a little bit different, and I think would also be intrigued if, by the context question of, is mentoring the change agent, or is it the context in which that happens, and that might affect how you use a strategy like this.
Mm-hmm. And I see that someone was asking specifically about an algorithm, and we are prepared with a slide to show a little bit about what an algorithm
so excited.
looks like. Great. Thank you so much for asking that question, because we have a little bit humorous slide here of what an algorithm is. So
you can Google algorithms and find all kinds of things. There's one on chocolate cake as well, but I thought this was more mentoring appropriate. Maybe you can use this with your matches as they start their match to think about, what do we talk about? How do we do this? It might be kind of fun.
People there, I wanted to mention Jean Rose is actually on the line today.
And
she typed in a question: can we break down what is meant by intuition and things that might go into gut instincts? And I think that's really kind of the essence of what an algorithm is trying to do, and what we're encouraging everybody on the line to do. So often mentoring providers say we think about intuition and we put a lot of gut instincts into our matches, but trying to actually break that down into what that means is complicated and complex, and also there's a lot of rich thought that can happen in there. So I think we have Joe on the line, and I don't know, Jean, if there's anything that you'd like to add, but if we wanted to have Jean perhaps raise her hand if there's anything she wanted to say to add into this conversation.
Great. Okay, let's see if...
That would be great. I'm feeling silly for having talked about it now.
Okay, well, Jean, if you think of something, just let us know either by sending us a chat or raising your hand from your control panel. But otherwise, we'll move on, because we wanted to spend a little time talking with Joe Bergen, Program Director from Friends of the Children in Portland. Joe started out at Friends of the Children 10 years ago as a paid professional mentor, also called a friend, to 8 boys. He believes deeply that mentoring relationships have the power to transform a young person's life, especially to those who have many socioeconomic obstacles to overcome. And he feels lucky to live in Portland with his wife and 2 children. I'm not sure how lucky you feel now with the storms that are coming in from the Pacific right now, but you're probably used to that, right?
I am, yeah. I grew up in Colorado, and it's taken me many years to get used to not seeing the sun, and I've finally gotten used to it.
Okay, good. All right, well, welcome, Joe, and we're excited to have you share a little bit about the Friends of the Children process.
Yeah, and I'll apologize in advance. I'm not feeling super hot today, so my voice is a little bit, it's a couple octaves lower than it typically is, so I apologize for putting you through that, especially because you can't talk back to me right now. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Friends, and I'm going to talk to you about our matching strategy specifically for our adolescents. So Friends of the Children is a rather unique mentoring program. We start with children in kindergarten, and we stay with them all the way through high school. So they're in the program for typically about 12 and a half years. We identify them using a 6-week observation process, and we actively identify the most high-risk children in the community using that observation process. So then the mentors, as I said, are paid. In the younger years, our mentors work, and our mentors are called friends. The friends work with 8 children. In the younger years, they see them twice a week, once in school, once outside of school, for a total of 4 hours every week. The adolescent mentors, and we call them AFAs, which stands for Adolescent Friend Advisor. Our AFAs have up to 12 youth, and they still see them twice a week and for a total of 4 hours. The adolescent friends have more of an emphasis on group work, and our younger, our K-5 friends have more of an emphasis on one-on-one time with children. So that's a little bit about the program. We have 3 long-term goals that we're trying to achieve. The first is that we want our youth to graduate from high school or get a GED. The second is that they avoid early parenting, and the third is that they avoid the juvenile justice system. We, of course, want many other positive things for the youth that are more individualized, but because we work with a very high-risk population, achieving these 3 outcomes is a huge success and sets them up for future success in their life. So, so as I said, we have 2 different roles that serve children. We have as I said, an elementary age friend and then an adolescent friend. And our youth have one friend who works with them until 5th grade, and then they get a different friend who specializes in adolescent development as they enter into middle school. And we do this because it's really the same reason that a high school teacher doesn't follow a child all the way through. The skills that it takes to work with the 16-year-olds, we believe, are very different than the skills that it takes to work with a 6-year-old. And we think that that's true for mentoring relationships as well. So, and yet the program is really based on these long-term relationships. And so, so we enter into the transition where our youth gets a new mentor with a fair amount of trepidation, to be honest with you, because our youth oftentimes, when they have this long-term relationship with their mentor, it's the most stable relationship that they have. And so ending that relationship and starting a new relationship can be really challenging for them. We believe ultimately it's also very important because it's an experience that they get where they end a relationship and start a new successful relationship. And to do that, or they need to learn those kinds of skills as they grow through life. So in terms of our matching strategy, we start working on matching as our youth enter 5th grade. We have a program for them that we call 5GP, which stands for 5th grade promotion. And during 5GP, we get the kids together in gender-specific groups twice a month. And we cover a variety of topics. We talk about positive relationships. We talk about sexual health. We talk about special interests and really encourage the youth to get to know one another and to build trusting relationships amongst each other. Frequently, they haven't had a whole lot of interaction in our program as a group up until that point.
Joe, can I interrupt you
Yeah.
for just a second? I think
Sure.
you may have a less than strong audio connection, but if there's any way you can turn up your audio, some people are having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, that's good to know. Can you hear me better now? Or
Yeah,
not?
that's better. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. All right. Let me know if you can't hear me again, okay?
Okay.
So we do, like I said, we'll meet twice a month in gender-specific groups and really encourage these trusting relationships between the youth to form and develop. And then this culminates with a couple of activities. So as an example, during spring break, we do a lock-in with where we get the boys and the girls together and all of the friends together, and they spend the night here in our office building. And they do a bunch of fun activities. Then, starting in the spring, we enter what we call our matching season. And so the youth will complete a really quick bio, which are basically what they're interested in, what they look for in support from other people, and what they like to do. And then our friends will do something really similar. They'll talk about what geography would be best for them, because our youth live all over the Portland metro area. We talk about what kind of mentoring style they have and what kind of redirection style that they have through this survey, and then we ask them to talk about what special talents and interests they have themselves and what they feel most comfortable coaching others on. And then from there, we take those surveys, and we have a panel who will narrow down options, and then we do a speed dating speed dating night in late spring where the friends and the youth will come together, and so the youth will start to meet some of the new prospective mentors, and we'll play a series of games that encourage youth and friend interaction so that our friends get to know the youth a little better, and the youth get to feel comfortable with a wider variety of friends. We ultimately make the decision, the adults ultimately make the decision on the matching relationships. And we do that because we have a limited capacity for each mentor because they can only have up to 12 youth. We have a limited number of slots that each mentor has, so it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle and putting it together. But we do our best to include youth voice as much as possible in the process. And this culminates with with what we call a promotion activity that's an overnight, and this year we're doing it at the Oregon Aquarium, and we're going to spend the night in the Shark Tank. Last year we did a ropes course, so we try and do something that's really unique and different and a new experience for the youth, and that brings together the K-5 mentor, the adolescent friend, and the youth, and in this group experience. And so that's our matching strategy. And then in the 6th grade year, we utilized some of Peter Benson's work on Sparks to start these new mentoring relationships, so that those mentoring, the adolescent mentoring relationships, get grounded in these special talents and interests from the very beginning. So that's a little bit about our matching strategy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, go jump in, Celeste. I know you've got some questions there.
Yeah, there's a couple questions. I don't know how much time we can spend on this, but I'd love to have him answer a couple questions. First of all, there was one interesting question that came in that said, do you find that with each friend having multiple mentees is a struggle because they compare relationships? And somebody else asked about rematching and how your program handles rematching.
Yeah. Well, you know, so our friends are we call them paid professionals, and we really expect them to be professionals. And a big part of that is the fact that you might have some relationships that are more challenging than others, but you still have to show up and give it your best effort every time you see a child. So certainly you have, as a friend, you'll have relationships that are stronger than others and relationships that are less strong. And we have a supervision structure where friends get weekly coaching on relationships or challenges that they're having with specific relationships. So we really encourage folks to talk about what isn't working and what the challenges are, and brainstorm ways that we can improve there. So let's remind me what the other question was again.
Yeah, the other one was about rematching.
Oh yeah. So again, because we have limited space because our mentors are employees, we oftentimes don't have a whole lot of flexibility in rematching. I will tell you that this adolescent model that I described is actually a relatively new model for us, where we do more group programming. We implemented it about 5 years ago. And before that, when we lost youth from the program, we typically lost them because their friend left the organization, and then we had to match them with a new friend. And what we found with the adolescents is they really didn't want to get to know somebody new and have to really start over in the relationship. And that's really, in a lot of ways, the beauty of the group programming is that the adolescents in the program now have a special relationship with one mentor, but they get to know lots of the other mentors and youth in the program, and so we don't have that same kind of challenge. But again, we will match based on capacity that we have available, and sometimes we do have to make some difficult decisions.
Great, Joe. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. Both Joe and Ellen are going to remain on the line, so if you continue to have questions, go ahead and type them in. And many folks did write in with questions specific about how the Friends of the Children program operates. And I would encourage you to just go ahead and check out their website for a lot of that information. We will again type it in the chat box so that you can find more information about Friends there. And yep, there it is up on the screen as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I see that we're always optimistic about how much information we can squeeze into our webinars. So we're going to have to move on a little bit. We have a couple more things to talk about. One, we all kind of wanted to introduce this idea of meet and greet. This is from Dr. Michael Karcher, and some of you may be familiar with this process from him. Some of you may not. But this is a process by which programs can set up a way for mentors and mentees to especially if you're all starting at one time, to have some kind of chance to get to know each other a little and kind of artificially set up a naturally self-selective process for matching. So this is a really great activity that I've also recommended to different programs to implement, with some variations that really fit their programs. And April pulled out a quote here: although the magic of a natural connection is viewed as the primary matching tool, this should nevertheless be secondary to findings from research. I know we did this activity at the first Summer Institute on Youth Mentoring. We did it with professionals, with ourselves, and I was with the table that he took all of our. I'll explain. Basically, you just talk to everyone. You ask a couple questions like, when is your birthday? What's your family like? What's something you like to do? Couple really easy questions like that, and then afterwards you write down the names of people that you enjoyed talking to, kind of in an order of priority of who you most enjoy talking to, up to, I think we did up to about 5. And then Michael took all of that information back to his hotel room that night and looked at kind of created an algorithm, if you will, looked at the replies and matched people who had listed each other on their lists. And I was matched with Patty McRae, who used to work at the National Mentoring Center, now Education Northwest. And I have to tell you, it was so special to me that somebody chose me. Somebody wanted to be matched with me, even though we were just testing out this activity. I found it really powerful to think about a way of using with a mentoring program to have young people give their choice too, but also to know that someone is picking them. So something else to look at. And we have a little bit of information on Youth Build. I know they work with older youth, sometimes up to age 24, and they ask for their young people, their program participants, to identify somebody already in their life who could serve as a formal mentor. So aunts, uncles, teachers, coaches, neighbors, somebody they already have a natural connection with. So, so taking an existing relationship and putting it into a program context. They also provide training then for these newly identified mentors, and get them into a more formal program. So it's another way of approaching this idea of a natural selection.
Yeah, this is April. I would just say that I don't know if Youth Build is doing the having the kids identify people already in their lives, but they definitely would look at more of a hybrid of having the, like we've heard, where it's where there's some youth input into that selection, or trying to add some element of that natural connection to the matching process. But then I have talked with some other programs here in Minnesota who are doing the trying that. I don't have any reports about how successful they've been, but really trying to have them identify mentors within their own lives and kind of putting that natural relationship into a context, or putting that into a program. So just another interesting thing to throw out there to get the conversation going with our participants and get some more ideas. But this is actually linked in the slide, so if you want to read this whole summary, this whole paper, it's not very terribly long, but it really describes the whole process for you and give some of those checklists and things. So this is linked within the slides if you go and download those.
Great, thank you, and thank you for that clarification. I think I was thinking of the National Guard Youth Challenge program where they specifically asked their program participants to identify somebody already in their life. So thank you for that clarification. Okay, and now just kind of to wrap up, we were talking about different models, different ways of matching in our collaboration calls, in our planning calls, and somebody asked me how we do it. So we just wanted to share a little bit about, I just want to share a little bit about Friends for Youth and how we go about doing this. And, you know, our program goal is to create a long-term enduring match. This is something that is specific to what we would like to have happen rather than just have some kind of mentoring relationship to deliver certain prevention-focused activities. Nothing wrong with it, but that's just not what our mission is. So, so we have 3 different ways that we were that I just want to briefly mention of how we support our matching process. And so one of the ways is we have a really in-depth application process. Mentors are interviewed extensively, hour and a half, 2-hour long interviews where we ask everything about their lives, well, I should say almost everything about their lives, it seems like, including what kind of experiences they've had growing up with their families. We're looking for the real impactful experiences that may have some connection to a young person. Mentees are interviewed alone so that we can get a true sense of how they feel. Parents and caregivers are also interviewed about preferences, and I put that in quotes because it's not, we let them know that these are, we definitely want to take into account if they have some strong preferences, but we do have a limited number of mentors, and if parents were, I know we've had some parents who say, you know, I want to make sure that my child is matched with, you know, a specific race or ethnicity mentor, or maybe has a specific religion that they really feel strongly about. We can say, well, you know, we'll certainly take that into account, but it's not as if we have, you know, we go into our mentor warehouse and we can pull out exactly what you like. So, so it's something we take into consideration. And we also have a referral agent for the young person who gives us more information at the very beginning of what's going on with this youth. So that's where that's how young people refer to our program, and so it's a very kind of in-depth getting to know you process by our staff. And then we also support our matching strategy with pre-match training. One of the things that we do in our training is we use profiles of actual mentees who are already matched, and then we ask the attendees to the training to answer questions about both their own challenges and strengths of being matched with a young person like this, what they might see as some of the mentees' strengths and challenges, and then what kinds of things they could think of doing together to build upon those strengths. We do use the 40 developmental assets as a model, so kind of training mentors to start looking at what are some ways to build on what's already going right for this young person. And we have tons of scenarios connected to really common situations, so we get to know how a mentor is going to respond to certain problems, as well as just, you know, normal, typical kinds of things that come up in a mentoring relationship. And lastly, we also use match meetings. This is something where, if we can go to the next slide, this is where everyone involved in our program staff will meet to decide after everyone's been formally accepted. We really discuss possible matches. So really, it takes at least an hour to go through the whole profile and really think about who is this person, where do they come from, what are their preferences, and what are their personalities. So I know we were talking a little bit about the personality and as a criteria, and that's something we look at, and it's not I don't think it's as easy as saying we always match extroverts with introverts. we're not necessarily doing that, but we're really looking at how two people might gel together. And we also look at the experiences of both mentors and mentees to look for similarities and also to look for situations to avoid. It's funny, sometimes we have mentors who in their interview process will say, you know, I had a family member who went through a certain experience and it was really traumatic for me, or it was very intense. I don't think I could handle it again, so I would prefer not to be matched with a young person who's going through maybe going through some kind of gang involvement or maybe at risk of suicide. So inevitably they'll put those things out there, and inevitably they are matched with young people who may not have ever said anything about that previously, but somehow it always comes up. So so you know, we're looking for adults who can make that that positive difference, but also a way for them to connect. So just a little bit about Friends for Youth, and I don't think I mentioned earlier, some of the things that we're thinking of too is in our whole process, you know, it's about 50% screening and 50% for matching. So we're looking at ways people respond to also see if they're appropriate enough to be mentors, but also once they, you know, if they pass that test, then how might we use this information to give them a good match. And our program has about an 88 to 90% success rate in terms of mentors and mentees making it to their first year together. That's the minimum commitment, and we have probably about 80 to 90% of matches who continue on past 2 years, 3 years. We have mentors and mentees who've known each other 15 years, 20 years, 20 years, and so that's really what we're looking at, and that's why we go through such an in-depth process. So that's a little bit about Friends for Youth. I don't know if we had any specific questions about that process.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. We did have one person who asked, could you give an example of the types of scenarios that you have mentors walk through when they're in that initial training?
Sure. So sometimes we will ask a question, have a scenario set up where it's really addressing some communication breakdown and how a mentor might go about handling it. We also get into maybe some more difficult issues thinking about matching in terms of maybe a young person who is expressing some kind of negative comment around other people, and how might a mentor react to it. So we use it as an educational, I'm sorry, I'm not being very specific, and I'd be happy to send out an example of one in a follow-up email. But really common things that happen, common roadblocks, common issues that we see come up to let mentors know this could happen, and also see how might you respond to that.
Great. And I had another great question come in. Sandra was wondering if any program out there uses personality type assessments like Myers-Briggs or the Allport's Big Five. If you do, we're curious to know, and if you wouldn't mind just letting us know either in your question panel or your chat panel. We haven't heard of that specifically at Oregon Mentors, but I'm sure there might be some program out there that does use some sort of personality type assessment.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I would say it might be more difficult to use those inventories because you know, you wouldn't be able to. Well, I don't know how much success you would have giving those to youth participants because most of the time these typology indexes have been created for adults, and so I wouldn't expect the results with children or youth would be very strong or be very valid. But I may be wrong on that. That's just a guess.
And for those of you who aren't paying attention to your chat filter, to your chat box, I wanted to highlight that Meg Ferns did type some information about different books on matching personality types. And again, they're probably more about adult to adult, but it could be interesting to read some of those books and see if there is a fit for your program.
Great. Okay, so we just have a couple minutes left, and we wanted to try to do a little bit of a wrap-up. I'm now thinking of millions of questions that we probably can turn into part 2 of this webinar because we really didn't talk too much about rematching. We didn't talk too much about matching outside of a one-to-one mentoring model. So maybe you'll see this part 2 coming up sometime later this year, and maybe address some of those other kinds of things. So I know we have one slide kind of on as a conclusion, and this song I would like to say has been in my head all morning, thanks to April, who sent me a little clip of Fiddler on the Roof this morning. So I've just had Matchmaker, Matchmaker floating through my mind.
It's really good that this is a collaborative, because I would end up putting together like a whole PowerPoint comedy routine. So I need to get entertained here. No, but sort of thinking that all of these, we have all these innovative strategies, and it was interesting when we were talking about even just the speed dating idea. That in some circles we're like, oh no, that's not a new enough idea, or that's not innovative enough. But for all of us, what's also great about this group is that we're all working with programs, and most of you are doing programs. And so I was thinking that that is a new idea for a lot of people, even just having some youth input into who can be matched, and sort of depending on where you're at, these new ways may be new, or some of your old ways were once new as well, and that ultimately it does come down to that intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with all of the different models, it always boils down to some human being matching another human being, and just trying to gather as much information and data and insight to make it as best as possible.
And I would add too, kind of going back to some of our initial slides from Tim, is really knowing what's the goal of your program. Are you looking to make a strong relationship, or are you looking to use mentoring as a context so that the mentor could be, there might be some smaller variations in terms of a stronger match, but maybe any of your mentors who are prepared and trained would be able to step in and deliver those specific activities to any young person and still be successful. So really thinking about where you're starting from first, and then decide where it is that you'd like to go from there. So, and to wrap up, if eHarmony can't and Match and Cupid can't get it right all the time, how can we? That will be the question on everybody's mind as we keep going. So I just wanted to, we're now out of time. I just really wanted to thank everyone who's been participating on this webinar. Thank you very much, April and Celeste and Meg, for collaborating as the hosts of the webinar.
And it's been a little confusing for people to figure out where to find information about upcoming webinars, and believe it, it's confusing to us too as we're working in this collaborative sometimes, so we're figuring that out. But really, any of the partners that you see listed, most of us probably have something on our websites, but then we decided as a group, the mentoring forums, if we could drive you there. There is a thread included there, and so, we don't have time to go into it now, but just go to the mentoring forums, and you can, if you're not already signed up, sign up, and you can follow it there. What's great about that is that you could continue the conversation, also ask questions, suggest ideas. We could talk about topics before and after this webinar so that they can continue to live on after you go and listen to the podcast from Tim Cavell. Could go back and start a thread and start the conversation and keep this going. We've got hundreds of people participating, and so lots to say, and I'm sure lots of great ideas from the field. And we can hang around here if you have questions about the collaborative. We can stay on and field some of those questions as well if you're interested.
Great. All right, thank you. And thank you very much, Ellen Mahoney from iMentor.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great. And thank you, Joe Bergen from Friends of the Children in Portland. you're still with us, you might be on mute, but thank you very much for sharing your program. And as you leave, you will see a short survey that would help us if you can take that really quickly, and you can get more information about everything we've been talking about. So for those of you who are ready to end this webinar, thank you very much for being here. We look forward to seeing you next month. And if anyone else is interested in staying on and has some more questions for us, we'll stay on about 5 more minutes. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.